Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the studio this evening. Thank you for joining me in the studio as I paint this beautiful picture of the California coastline. I'm going to walk you through all the steps to paint this beautiful little picture. It won't take us too long, and you're going to end up with something that looks fantastic. But to start with, let's talk about the materials that I am using. The paper that I'm using is just in a binder of paper. It's Pro Art watercolor paper, 12 by 16 inches. A nice little notepad of paper there. The paints that I'm using are my M.Graham paints. I didn't clean my palette after I painted my last painting. You can see there's a little leftover paint on the palette there, but I'll walk you through all the colors that I'm using as I'm doing this. Right now I'm just trying to make a nice neutral gray, which are all the colors on my palette put together, so I can make a few little clouds up here. But the sky that I've got going on right now is just basically a cerulean blue, a nice blue color for the sky. I've painted on the blue, leaving a few empty spaces, and on the bottom of those empty spaces I just put that gray color, and then I'm kind of taking off the hard edges, just rubbing the brush on there, and you can see I've got some nice clouds floating in the sky. Now I have pre-drawn this painting. The image is a little bit light, but I'm not winging it. I do have it pre-drawn. I've got a new camera that I'm working with, and I don't think I have the color balance quite right on it. I do adjust this a little bit later on in this painting. It's going to get better, and with any luck, each subsequent painting, it'll just continue to get better and better. The brushes that I'm using today are from our friends at Zen Art Supplies. These are the Black Tulip brushes. They're a synthetic brush, nice watercolor brush for a very reasonable amount of money. Okay, I'm going to mix up some greens. Now, I'm not going to go back and touch the distant hills there. I'm going to mix up some green and paint that little plateau that you see in front of us on kind of the middle left-hand side of the reference photo that's there. And I just want to get a nice green. It's going to be a nice bright green as a first layer, and I'm just going to drop that color in there. And as I go along and repaint my brush or get some new paint on my brush, I'm going to just ever so slightly change the value of the green that's in there, touching a little cobalt green, a little olive green, make it a little darker. I'm going to actually grab a little azo orange. Nope, that's gamboge. In here to yellow that green up a little bit. And there we go. I just don't want to have one flat wash of green the whole way. That looks pretty good right there. It doesn't look like much right now. It's just kind of a green blob floating in the air. But that's going to be the top for our shoreline right there. And then there's a little bluff in front of us. Just going to paint some green on here. Whatever colors I have on my palette, we'll adjust that when we get to it at the end. But I just want to get some color on here. Very good, very good, very good. Now, a lot of my paintings, as you see the video, I do speed them up a little bit. And you see me painting faster than I normally would. In this video, this is a quick little painting, a fun painting to do. You will see me do this in real time. These are my actual brush strokes painted at the speed that I normally paint them. And you can see I've got this painting. It's going to be probably 12 inches square on this pad. That gets done in less than a half an hour. And we end up with a very nice painting in the end. Okay, so I'm mixing a little bit more green, some browns, and I'm going to start on the hills, the distant hills back here. The hills that are in the reference photo are really a bit bluer. The hills that, as I see them in real life, if I look at this painting, well, they've just come from green, but they're much browner. I don't know what time of day this picture was taken, but it's really got a really blue tint to it back there. So I'm just going to paint these how I think they ought to be painted. And along with the green that I'm dropping in here, that's a little phthalo green, a little Hansa yellow to tone down that phthalo. I'm going to mix in a little bit of ultramarine and a little bit of burnt umber, maybe just a touch of sepia to give these distant hills a little bit of texture, a little bit of dimension. You can see the hills that I've painted on the left-hand side already look like they've got something going on there just by mixing those colors, allowing them to stand as their own in the background. And just continuing every time I go to my palette, I'm going to adjust the colors a little bit. Here's a little bit of yellow ochre I'm throwing into that green mixture. There we go. As the mountains come down and meet the ocean back there, the color changes a little bit. On the reference photo, it gets really rocky down there, and all those rocks are really dark color, but I don't want those dark colors to mix too much with the color that I'm going to put in the foreground, so I'm going to keep them a little bit different color, maybe a little greener back there, and we'll see how it looks when it's done. I'll give you a little spoiler. I think it looks fantastic. Here's a little sepia I'm just mixing in there, maybe right along that shoreline. And just dropping that color in there. If we don't like the way it looks right now, we can always go back and adjust the color later. It's not a big deal to go and do that. So we just want to get a nice layer of color on the painting as it is. And you can see there's already looking to be some nice color happening on those hills back there. Okay, so now let's color the bluffs in the front. So getting a little bit of yellow ochre for that, a little bit of burnt umber. And I'm just going to come and drop some color on here. I've got a few little cracks in here to help with giving some depth to this painting. I'm just going to layer this color on here. That's a little thicker than I want, so I'm gonna actually water that down right on the page, and you'll see all of that come out in just a second. But just putting a little bit of color on there. Now, if you're wanting to paint this at home, rewatch the video, paint along with me, anything like that, give it a try to see if your painting turns out better than mine. I will drop this reference photo in my Discord channel. You can just go there and grab it if you want. And then you can paint the same exact picture that I'm painting. Now you see, I'm taking a few liberties. I'm not doing it exactly like the reference photo looks. I'm not trying to make an exact copy of that. I'm just trying to make something that I would enjoy, that I enjoy painting, that I would enjoy looking at. And so that's why mine is looking a little different than the reference photo. Now, I did drop just a little bit of red in the sand, that little beachy area. And here's a little bit of Payne's Gray to tone down the side. and to begin to put some darks on there so we know where the depth, the little outcroppings are going to be. And just put that on and draw that out. There it is. Now the reference photo you see has a ton of little rocks out there in the water. They've got a ton of big rocks out there in the water and on the beach. In my reference drawing here has none of that. That's because rocks are rocks, and we can make rocks look like anything we want. So I'm going to wait until the end, and I'm going to drop some rocks on. As we get a little bit more developed in here, we'll see where they need to go and how they need to go, and we'll go from there. I just didn't feel the need to draw them all on there. We'll see how it turns out here in just a second. Okay, so I've got my foreground painted. I'm going to put together a little bit of color here, and hopefully I can use this to paint. Well, let's see. Well, I'm mixing up a big a bit of ultramarine blue. This is going to be for water. It's got a little bit of sepia in it, a little bit of Payne's gray in it. Got a little bit too much on my brush. There it goes. I don't like using just ultramarine blue for water. I think it's too bright. That might work for somebody's water somewhere. It doesn't always work for the water that that we have here where I live. It never gets quite that bright of blue, so I knock the color down just a little bit with a little bit of sepia and or a little bit of Payne's gray. There's a little bit of just regular ultramarine dropped right in there. I'll just let that color spread out. That's just going to add a little bit of variance for us. And then back in this little cove, it's a little darker back here. So I've darkened it a little bit. We're just putting the color in and drawing it out. Again, at this stage, I'm not trying to do too much. I have to keep telling myself, I'm not working on the finished painting at this point in time. I'm not done with the painting. This is just the initial wash. Let's just get some color on there, and then we'll adjust it during the next layer and make it look exactly like what we want it to look like. So here we're just getting some color on our page. There we go. And you can see all of a sudden now it's starting to look like something. It's starting to look like our reference photo, or it's a lot closer to our reference photo. Anyways, so a little green in with our blue mixture, and I'm going to put that on those far distant hills back there. Which one? No, let's start on the other one. There we go. So I've just got some tiny little hilltops back there peeking over the hills in front, and I'm trying hard not to turn my page so much. I have a habit of just turning the page as I'm painting to make a brush stroke a little easier, but it doesn't make it easier to view, so I'm going to try to cut down on that a little bit and move my arm around a little bit as I do the painting. Hopefully it'll be a little better viewing experience for you. Of course, I reserve the right to move that paper all I want if I have to, but in this case I think we can get around it. And there's a little pool of water. Let's just take that away. Done. Simple as that. We've got some very far distant hills back there. We got some closer hills up front. They're still far away, and then we've got our main focus right in the center. I have to see how wet, how dry we are. Okay, so I did let my paint on the page dry just a little bit, and I did try to adjust the color on my camera just a little bit. I hope that it's working for you, that you can see the color a little bit better. All right, I've just mixed up a little bit of sepia and a little bit of Payne's Gray. And right at the water line here, this is a great way to make a water line. Right at that water line. It's really dark. The water laps up there. All kinds of stuff is growing right on that water line, and it gets really dark. So I'm just going to put a line of really dark down there, and then I'm going to put a line of a little less dark just above it. Let those two mingle together. And then I'm going to put another line above that that's even a little less dark. So there we go. Just put some greens in there. And I'm going to let all those kind of blend together. There we go. And one big swath down the top of it. And we've got some nice dark lines there where that water, where that tide comes in and out, and it stays wet for a long time. Okay, so I'm just mixing up a bit of a blue color here, and I'm going to start to make this little mesa area into 3 or 4 different areas. Here I'm just putting in a couple of darks. You're actually doing some negative painting. So whatever I paint here is going to make the one in front look a little different. So however you want that one to look, just paint it that way. And here you go. So now all of a sudden we've got a couple of different little areas there where the rocks jut out. I'm going to blend that down just a little bit. There, just not much to it. Just touch it with the tip of your brush. Take the hard edge off. You don't have to. You could leave a hard edge on there. It would look just as good. And then this over here is way back in deep shadow back here. So I'm using a little bit of dark color. Starting with a little bit of Payne's Gray. Adding in a little bit of a warm brown, the burnt umber as I come forward. And then moving into a little bit more of the yellow ochre. Try to change that color a little bit. There it is. Yeah, and you can see that we've got the edge of that cliff there now. It's more of a cliff, a bit more of a cliff. And the water back here, way dark too. Right, so let's put some of that dark water in there. Now, what else can we do here? We've got to start making some stones out here. So let's just drop a couple of on there. That might be a little dark, but that's okay. Those stones, those rocks, that cragginess that's out there, as you see them, they are awfully dark out there. And I'm basically using the side of my brush to draw these in wherever I feel like it. Right, wherever I think there needs to be a rock sitting either on the shoreline, sitting out in the water, I'm going to take this color, I'm going to drop it in there. I'm not worried about whether you can see through a little bit of that rock or not. Not worried whether there's a little bit of blue behind it or ochre behind it. And then right here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dark side to these. I just put a little bit of ultramarine blue on my brush, touch the back side of these rocks, and pull it out just a little bit, just a touch. You pull it out just a touch, that's going to give it a tiny bit of a shadow, and that blue is going to mingle with that brown, that burnt umber, that sepia, that yellow ochre that these rocks are made out of. And it's just going to give it a natural shadow on one side. And then as many of these rocks as I want to put out there, I can continue to build these on the shore. I can put them out in the water, wherever they need to go. And as I add a few darks here and there to that cliff face, you can see it's gaining a little bit more depth to it. And just drop a little blue on the back side of these and let the watercolor do what it does. Let it help you instead of fighting with it. There it goes. And simple as that, we've got a few rocks set out there. I just noticed, I didn't notice this so much as I was painting them. They kind of look like they're all in a bit of a square pattern right in front of that. We'll see if we can take care of that a little bit as we go on. And then I'm just adding a little bit of color to the beach area here. There doesn't need to be any. There could be some, there could be none. But if you add a little bit of dots and dashes and a splash of color here and there, maybe it looks like there's a dip or a depression or something growing on the side of that beach. Just to give a little bit more interest out there. And I should say at this point in time, I'm still using the same brush that I started this whole thing with. Oh, you know what? I was going to start a rock right there. And then this beach up here looks a little too light to me. It looks a little too light. I'm just going to add a bit more color to that. A little red in the center there. Doesn't matter. That was a little bit of maroon and pyrrole red in with my yellow ochre on this little beachy, sandy bit. We don't have super sandy beaches here. A lot of them are rocky and pebbly, but I think for the sake of this painting, we could make them look a little bit more sandy, beach-ish. Especially if we've got all of these big rocks out there, we have a pebbly beach. Okay, now I'm going to tackle a little bit of... Oops, I'm sorry, I thought I was going to do the grass in the foreground, but I'm going to paint this mesa. So a little bit of Hansa yellow or gamboge to change the color of my greens a little bit. A little bit of cobalt green or phthalo green for my greens, and then just alter that here and there. Make a little bit, well, that's a bit dark. Add a little bit of water, thin that down just a little bit. A little bit of color here and there. Here's going to be a little azo orange splashed right in. A little bit of Hansa yellow, a cold yellow on here. Just take that right on down to the edge, and now we've got some grasses growing on here. I'm trying hard not to paint all of the space. I want a little bit of light to shine through there. I think I've done it too much. If I can take a little off, maybe not. Let me dry my brush and see if I can't pull a little highlight out of there. That's okay. I don't want to take up all of the bright highlight that's back there. But all of a sudden now we've got a nice topper on there. Our colors in the background have dried and lightened a little bit. A little bit of sepia right along that shoreline over there. Yes, there are houses back there in the reference photo. I don't feel like putting those in. I don't think they add anything. Okay, and now we get to do the foreground. So I'm just trying to use the side of my brush and make kind of a mottled little area up here. And I want a few different colors of green. Just trying to look to make bush-y shapes. Right? This is the same greens that I've been using before. Cobalt green, phthalo green. If I want to lighten that or warm that a bit of warm yellow right there, that's actually azo orange in it. If I want to darken it a little bit, I just throw, just like I did there, a little bit of olive green in there. Trying really hard not to just paint over the entire thing, and trying to think what a bush or a bunch of weeds right around the coast, what shape they would take, and dropping in some color to do that. All right, we've got a nice little area. I'm going to drop a little blue in here to darken up a few areas. Maybe it's not all light. Let's make a few darks in here. That dark will help to make a couple of different shapes too. And letting that color mix on the page. Just let it do what it wants to do. There's no need for us to do extra painting when the painting is going to do the painting for us, or the paint is going to do the painting for us. And here we go. Now a couple of rocks on the near beach. I don't know. Here's one, there's one, there's one. A couple. We don't need too many. Just one here and there. I think if I were going to do this again, I'd put some up in that little cove. But here, the same thing I did on the other side. Just dropping a little bit of straight ultramarine blue on the back side of these rocks, and pulling out just a tiny bit of a shadow from them, just like that. Maybe a couple of little something on the beach here to add some texture to the sand. We're getting very close to being done with this one now. I'm going to add just an extra little bit of color. I'm just looking to see if there are any last minute details, something I could add to this. It's going to make it look even better than it does. And I think I need to do something in the water. So mix up some ultramarine blue. That's a little Payne's gray. That's a little sepia. Mix it all up there. A little bluer. And we're off and running. Right, the ocean isn't just a still area. It's not a perfect, calm area. We've got some waves and ripples. Maybe it's not a huge wave day. There's no giant crashing waves, but we do need something here. So I'm going to put in a little bit of waves here, and I'm just going to pull out some of that color. A little here, dab in some color here and there, just to give some interest to the water. A little more than we have, which is just flat. If I were in a lake somewhere, in a mountain, and there's no wind, then a lake with no waves would be fantastic. We'd put a nice reflection on there and be happy with it. But this is the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, let's say we're having a nice calm day, but we still have a little bit of waves coming in and out here and there. So that's about all I've got for you on this one. I hope you enjoyed seeing me paint the California coastline. I enjoyed painting it for you. I hope you come back to my channel and watch me do some more painting. If you want, down below there should be a link to the Discord channel where you can find a reference photo for this. There are also links to my website and instant media, social media down there. I do want to thank you for stopping by. Well, actually, I think maybe I've got a little bit. I'm remembering this. I've got a little bit more to go. These bushes and rushes and whatever these are here, they've got some sticks and twigs coming out of those. So I'm just going to draw those in like that. hopefully, as I add these and they overlap the beach, then that pushes the beach, the near beach back, which pushes the far beach back, which pushes the background back even further. And that's the hope when you do this. Okay, that's really all I've got for you guys right now. Thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.